Sea, the storm, and the mangrove tangle. Over a shallow, salty, tropical sea, a flock of pelicans flew around a mangrove island. From the branches of this tangle of mangroves dangled long, sprouting seeds called propagules. As a pelican landed, it jostled a branch, and a propagule fell into the sea. For weeks, the propagule was carried by a strong current until it came to rest on the shore of a faraway lagoon. There it took root, sprouted leaves, and began to grow. For decades, in the hot Caribbean sun, as the tides rose and fell, it slowly grew and sent out prop roots to help it stand. By its 50th year, its vast network of roots anchored the little mangrove tree, allowing it to survive storms. It was now quite a distinctive tree. A mangrove tree crab scuttled by and exclaimed, "How can a tree grow in this salty sea?" She climbed the seedling to eat its leaves and made the mangrove her home. Mangrove oysters, sea anemones, and a coral settled on the roots. Small fiddler crabs dashed and darted about below the high tide line and disappeared into the holes under the mangrove's roots. A periwinkle tree snail came upon the mangrove seedling and thought, "I can eat the algae that grow on those roots." So it stayed on to live there. Mangrove leaves fell into the water, decomposed, and turned into muck. In this muck, seagrass began to grow. Several more years passed, and the mangrove tree became larger, sending out more branches and prop roots. It grew flowers that were pollinated by the wind. Driftwood floating across the sea carried anole lizards on the mangrove tree. We can eat the ants, mosquitoes, and other insects that crawl and fly over these flowers, they thought. Hummingbirds hid their nests within the mangrove's tangled branches, while a caterpillar and the mangrove tree crab nibbled on its leaves. After the mangrove flowers dropped their petals, propagules formed. These living seeds grew long and heavy until they fell down between the mangrove roots into the seagrass. There the new propagules began to grow. A seahorse carried his babies in a pouch in his belly. "Here is a good place for my babies to hide," he thought, and gently released them into the seagrass bed. Mama shrimp and fish laid their eggs there. Grunts and mangrove snappers fed in the seagrass at night and during the day, hid from bigger fish among the mangrove roots. The propagules grew into many mangroves. For 70 years this mangrove tangle grew and spread out farther and farther. Dolphins found the water around the mangroves teeming with fish and decided to stay there. Manatees came to feed in the seagrass, and they too made the waters around the mangrove their home. 100 years had passed since the first propagule planted itself here, and the mangrove tangle had become a big mangrove island. As a flock of pelicans dove for the fish, 2 fishermen came by. One said, "Let's cut these mangroves down and create a shrimp farm." The other fisherman replied, "But these mangroves are the only trees that can grow in the salty seawater. Many of the fish in the ocean start their lives in the nurseries around these mangrove islands. If we destroy the mangroves, we destroy the fish which give us all life." And so they went out to the sea and left the island in peace. 2 pelicans tucked themselves into the mangroves and thought, "Here we can build a nest and dive for fish." Herons came to hunt for shrimp, crabs, and small fish. A magnificent frigate bird puffed up his large red pouch to impress his mate. One afternoon, a pelican flew to the mangrove island. Breathlessly she cautioned, "Beware, prepare, a storm brews. A wild wind blows this way." She called to the creatures of the air, "Come hide deep within the tangled branches of the mangroves." The manatees lifted their noses in the air and sniffed. Yes, there was that sweet, damp scent of rain. On the horizon they saw far away plumes of rain descending from a raft of dark clouds. A hurricane was on its way. The seahorses called to the other creatures of the sea. Come with us. Beneath the roots in the center of the mangroves we will be safe. So they swam, crawled, scurried, and slithered to the shelter of the mangrove roots. That evening the breeze became a screaming tempest. Thick, dark, frothing clouds raced through the sky. The hurricane is here, the animals cried. Wind sang and moaned through the mangrove tangle, lashing, breaking, and tearing branches. The birds held on frightening to the power of the hurricane throughout the night. Under the sea, the sand churned as huge waves tossed and turned the fish and seahorses, trying to rip the mangrove roots from their hold on the seafloor. The next morning all was still. The sun shone from behind retreating purple clouds, and a mangrove propagule floated away on the current. The birds came out from the safety of the mangrove's damaged branches. The periwinkle tree snails timidly peeked out from their shells and looked around. The fish, the crabs, and the seahorses swam out from the protection of the mangrove roots. All were safe. Meanwhile, the mangrove propagule, blown by the storm, came to rest on the shore of a faraway lagoon. "10 years have passed. Dead, bleached branches still tell the story of the hurricane, but new growth has sprouted from the mangrove's broken branches, and the mangrove island is even bigger, wider, and deeper. Now, while pelicans dry their feathers, and dolphins jump, roll, and play in the waves, and manatees lazily loll in their seagrass bed, while a heron hunts in the shallows and a hawk screeches, the mangrove propagule carried on the waves to a faraway lagoon has now grown into a little mangrove tree, and there it will continue to grow and grow and grow."